looking at all the people on this image, the shocking fact is that they all committed suicide after they achieved what the world considers to be success. They had things made, they had everything. But the more you look at it, the more you realize that actually you may be the richest person on earth. That doesn't mean that you are coping properly. You may be that person who has the nicest husband, the nicest wife, the nicest house, the nicest job. You have everything in your life going on well. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have that ability to cope. And I had this client ask me this one day that she doesn't get it. She has no reason to feel lacking in herself. She has no reason to feel such low self-worth. She had no reason to feel depressed or anxious at all. But why is she still feeling this way? And it's because there is something happening which seems like the whole society, everybody is just blind to it, but it's affecting many people. And this core problem, we're going to be looking at it today. It determines what you do with your life. It determines the direction you take. It determines how confident you feel as a person. It determines the choices you make. It controls everything you do. And so we'll be showing you how you can use these concepts to build a good self-esteem and also to boost your ability to start coping better on an emotional level. So what we'll be covering today, we'll be looking at the ultimate emotional stability hack. And this is what will help you change your life for the better. I know people say that, I just want to change my life for the better. But then how do you do that practically? We're going to be looking at how we can achieve that today. So how to become fully resilient to emotions like anxiety, depression, anger, so that you can cope when unexpected situations hit you. I don't know if you've ever been in that place where I thought things were going well, but then something just happened. And as that thing happened, it caught you by surprise and your emotions gave way. You either became very depressed, became very anxious, you became very angry or very stressed. You just found that you didn't have the capacity in your head to cope. And it's almost as if just one more thing and you collapse. And then we'll be looking at how to avoid emotional mistakes that keep you stuck in negative life loops so that you can stop feeling like you're not a useful person. And then we'll be looking at a simple system that will demolish low self-esteem by breaking down your worst emotional weaknesses. So, there's a hole in your boat. And this boat represents you as a person. It represents your capacity to survive. It represents your self-worth, your self-esteem, your emotional stability. And so let's just imagine that this boat now has a hole, and this hole is beginning to cause your boat to sink. And literally that would mean that in your life, for some reason, you just have some sort of self-worth issue that just seems to color everything. Or you just find yourself in a place where you are in cycles where you're just not coping. You cope for a little bit and you're back to not coping again. So there's like a hole in the system that's causing all these things to happen. So let's just imagine that you're in this boat and I came to you and I said to you, I'll give you a bucket to bail the water out. Or I'll come and I'll fix this boat for you. I will plug the hole in and I'll also give you tools just in case if that hole comes up again. I'll show you how to fix it. Which of these two options would you go for? Would you go for just bailing it out, or you go for this option that seems more like a permanent, supportive fix? Now, the reason I'm asking you this question is that many times in our emotional life, the mental health system, they're giving us only one option. And the option they're often giving us is an option where they are giving us a bucket to bail the water out. In other words, You go to the doctors, they give you medication. Even if you go to the therapist, they give you solutions that does not actually attack the source of the problem and stop the issues from repeating and repeating and repeating again. So today, what I'll be giving you is a strategy that will help you start to block the sources of emotional problems in your experience. But to kind of take this a bit further then, some of you may have attended the last workshop, that was 2 weeks ago, where we talked about how to deal with the feeling of overwhelm. And we talked about Amy and her goal. I think we used a concept called baby nappies. We can't go through that today. Was quite an interesting concept. But the baby nappies just kind of signifying the different kind of problems we go through in life. So here's Amy, and Amy wants to reach a goal. And the goal she wants to reach is a life where she feels contented, where she feels fulfilled, where she feels useful, where she feels she has the energy to be able to actually enjoy her life and feel comfortable in her life. But she's got all these obstacles in the way. And Amy is trying to get to that goal. But as she comes to an obstacle, she tries her best to address the obstacle. Maybe that obstacle is procrastination. She tries her best to address procrastination. But then she's using strategies that are more like bailing water out of the boat than fixing the hole in the boat, which means the problem just keeps staying alive. So she comes across a difficult person and she does the same thing. She uses a strategy that's, rather than plugging the hole, is actually feeding the problem and making the problem bigger. And so she's using the same strategy for all these different problems, not even realizing she's doing this. But the impact that is now having on Amy is making Amy feel like she's failing over and over. And the more she feels she fails in being able to motivate herself to do things. She fails in being able to manage the relationships in her life, or manage or work with the people she works with. She finds she's failing in managing her time. She finds she's failing in managing her energy levels. Why isn't all of this now going to start making her feel low self-worth? But why is she actually failing in managing these things? Is it because she's no good and she can't actually deal with these things? My answer is no, it's not because of that. It's because of a problem that I'm going to be highlighting. And once you understand that problem, you see that actually it's quite easy to start working your way away from this low self-esteem problem. So I'll use this next image to explain it a bit more. So this is our TBC system. So TBC just stands for Take Back Control System, because the system helps you to take back control of your life from emotional health problems. So this is the way the system works. Let's just imagine that this is you now, and you're trying to get through life to achieve your goals. Your goal may be that you want to be better at work, and you want to achieve and climb up the ladder. Your goal may be you want to have better relationships, and just have that the dynamics in your relationship, there's more love, because that's what gives you fulfillment. But as you're trying to do the different things to get through, it just feels like there's a force that's constantly getting in your way. Some of these forces are forces you can't predict. Some of these forces are forces you can't control. And because you can't control them, there's nothing you can do about them. But then there is this hidden pressure, this big, massive boulder. The hidden pressure. And this is the bit that is the core problem. Because if you can address this hidden pressure and knock most of this out, it means then that the load you're carrying, the weight you're carrying, you're trying to reach your goals reduces, which then means that you have more energy. You can actually perform better. It has less impact on your emotions. What do you think is in this hidden pressures? What's causing this to be so big? What's making it such that it can easily hold you back in life, or maintain mental health problems, or maintain a low self-worth? To kind of elaborate on this more, I've shared this analogy. I call this the table salt effect. So we not all know about salt and how salt can be a very good thing and positive thing. But then if you take too much salt, salt can then become a very bad thing. Ironically, if you take too little salt, it's been proven that you could die if you don't have enough salt in your system. I actually had a client who drank so much water to the point that the electrolyte level in her body got diluted and she started acting drunk. We had to take her to the A&E. So the amount of salt in your body is important. So there's a thing with table salt that too much is bad for you, too little is bad for you. This sort of mimics what I'm kind of talking about here. Because you see, if underused or overused, anything you do that gives you enjoyment, that gives you peace, that gives you safety and security will lead to stress, anxiety, depressive symptoms, any other stress or mental health problem you want to put in there. That sounds wrong, but I want you to kind of focus on this again. It may be that what you enjoy is watching YouTube videos. If you watch YouTube videos too much in your life, obviously you probably won't get work done. You won't get things done. It starts to bring problems in your life. Peace is a beautiful thing, right? And I love my peace. And sometimes I can love my peace to the point where I just want nobody to be around me, no one to disturb me. But if I do that too much, guess what? My wife starts to get frustrated with me, and then my peace then disappears. Safety is a good thing. Security is a good thing. But guess what? If you use safety too much or use security too much, you may end up becoming agoraphobic. Because in trying to keep safe, the rest of the world starts to close away from you. So there's this system going on where when we rely too much on any good thing, it actually starts to become bad. And this is where the pressures, the hidden pressures starts to come into play. Because in order to stop those hidden pressures from carrying on, affecting you and influencing things in your life and affecting your sense of self-worth or affecting your ability to cope mentally, you've got to tone down your strengths. And again, that sounds wrong. Or you may be actually thinking, but I don't have any strength, so I don't see how this applies to me. So I ask a question. How would you like people to see you? Would you like people to see you as someone who is strong or weak? As someone who is dependable or someone who is useless? I mean, from most people I ask, 99% of people I ask will say, actually, I want people to see me as someone who's dependable. I want people to see me as someone who is strong. I may not want to look strong like this big guy over here, but probably I don't want to look weak like the guy on the right hand either. Maybe I want to be seen as someone in the middle, because maybe if I come across as too strong, people won't be able to relate with me. But the point here is, there is a underlying brainwashing that is occurring, that has been happening to all of us, that we don't realize is happening. And that is this concept that we think it's bad to look weak. It's bad to be an emotionally weak person, for example. We see it like it's bad to just be viewed as weak, because if you are viewed as weak, people take advantage of you. People who will walk over you. So we all want to be seen as we are coping, we are confident, we are strong. But what's the problem in this? Let's look at these two sentences. Are these two sentences correct? Strengths always help us to function, or strengths give you an advantage in situation. And when you look at it, a part of you will be thinking, yes, that's true, because if I'm strong, I keep on functioning, I don't break down easily. That's true, isn't it? And if I'm strong and I want to carry this table, it gives me an advantage to be able to carry this table. Because if I went to a contest, and they're trying to lift a table to win, and I can't carry the table, it's giving me an advantage there, isn't it? But is this really true? Because you see, if it's true, what we are saying here is then that weaknesses stop us from functioning. Weaknesses put us at disadvantage in situations. This is how we think about weaknesses. Now, because if we think of weaknesses like that and we feel we are weak in ourselves, no wonder why it starts to bug us a lot. Because we're thinking, if I am a weak person, I'm someone who is not worth much. It affects how I can function. It affects how people will value me. It affects how people will... It may make people take advantage of me, put me in danger in situations. So this becomes the start of something that creates a spiral of mental health issues. And in reality, if you sit down with anybody who's struggling emotionally with any mental health problem, you'll find that there is a core thing at the base, at the foundation, that is linked to a sense that something in my life is making me weaker. And because it's making me weaker, it's creating problems in my life, and it just makes it hard to cope with that. But this mindset shift is part of what is causing the destruction. And I'll explain further. What do you think, this word, sensitivity, is this a strength or is it a weakness? Let me just hear from you.
No, I think it's definitely a strength.
Or sensitivity, you think is a definite strength. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think it's a strength.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Anybody else think it's a weakness?
Some people will see it as a weakness.
Okay. So, anybody have any other opinion? Let me see what some people are typing here. I think it's a strength or somewhere in between. Okay. So, and you're all sort of right. You're kind of right. Because actually sensitivity is a strength. Because if, for example, my job is I'm a psychotherapist, and to be a good psychotherapist, I have to be sensitive to people's feelings, to where people are at. If I am not sensitive to people, I won't be able to read their situation correctly and be able to respond correctly. So I need that as a strength. And ironically, I'm an extremely sensitive person. I'm so sensitive that as a child, my sisters used to sing songs about my sensitivity. I remember them singing a song of "Who is Mr. Greedy Pig? Wale, wale," and that you make me cry then. And my sisters would be telling me, "Why you are just too sensitive? You're just too sensitive." But my sensitivity then makes me be able to connect very well to other people's pain. But this same sensitivity, though, because you see, if I'm walking down the road, those who don't know, I am black. I'm black skinned. So if I'm walking down the road and somebody shouted "nigger" at me, it won't bug me one bit. It will just go over my back. I won't even hear it. It won't bug me. But if I come home and my wife says "shut up," the shut up will feel like 10,000 way worse than the nigger the person shouted outside. My sensitivity affects me the closer I am to a person. So what am I saying here? The sensitivity can be a strength or a weakness. Can be both. And this is the thing that we are not often seeing. We often see something as a strength and think it's only a strength. But the reality is anything that's a strength can also be a weakness. And when we start to see this and start to see how it plays out in so many different things we're doing, it starts to make sense as to why our efforts are not working as well as we want to. Let's look at this other word. Confidence. Is that a strength or a weakness?
That's a strength.
Can it be a weakness though?
No.
Anybody else?
I'd say that it could, because I know. I'm sorry, I don't have my camera on at the moment.
That's okay. You don't need the camera.
I'm American, and
Yes.
We grow up being far too confident, and it makes us very unpopular and also very insensitive.
Right. Yes.
In that sense, it can be a weakness.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's very true. That's very true. Wonder Woman says, I think also strength or somewhere in between. Okay. So yes, again, this can be a strength or a weakness. I used to be, there was a time when I went to do a test. I was very confident I was going to get an A in that test. But I got an F. I got an F. And the reason I got an F is that I studied something completely different to what everybody was expecting to study. But because I was so confident, I did not even cross-check with other people or see. Because if I had been sharing my work with other people, I would have found out that I was going the wrong direction, completely wrong direction. So, and I don't know if you've ever worked with people who are so confident, they're confident in their position that you can't actually budge them. They can be very hard to work with. So whilst confidence is a strength, because if you are someone who's shy and trying to develop confidence, you'll be seen as something that is something that you should be aspiring up to. But confidence itself can also become a weakness. Then a strength, based on everything I've said so far, so a strength is something that you can become good at, but it can become a blessing or a curse. And not being aware of this is where the problem starts. Because as a strength develops, there's often a parallel weakness developing at the same time. Something is getting better, something else is getting worse. So in other words, the weaknesses you are looking at in your life, they're only there because there are other things that you are leaning on. There are other strengths you're leaning on, but not realizing that there's a parallel relationship going on here. I hope that made sense, because this is the key central theme of everything we're going to be learning here today. As a strength develops, there's often a parallel weakness developing at the same time, and being able to see it is what's going to help you be able to start balancing your life in a way that those weaknesses that you're seeing will not be there anymore. And ironically, this is actually a natural rule. What I mean by that is a rule or a life rule. So with anything you do. So let's do a quick game here. So we've got two people here, Bode and Tony. So Bode's got strength, Tony's got strength. I'll call out the strength. You tell me what potential weakness could develop with that strength. So Bode's strength is planning and organizing things in the distant future. What could be a weakness?
They could be very inflexible and unable to do anything spontaneously.
Exactly. And the ironic thing with that is that the more you plan and you're trying to organize and you're realizing that you can't be spontaneous or things catch you by surprise, it boosts your anxiety. The more it boosts your anxiety, this is going to affect your self-esteem, whether you like it or not. Okay, What about seeking help and support? If that's your strength, you know how to seek help and support from others a lot. What could be a weakness from that?
You can also be let down.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What if at the time you're trying to seek help and support, there's nobody around? Then you're just left on your own, which means you haven't learned to depend on yourself. It becomes a weakness then. What if you are someone who's very good at socializing and allowing people into your space? What could be a weakness?
You could, I think that then there's too many people and you're not going to be able to trust because there's too many people knowing too much of your business. True.
So too many people in your face, in your space, so you have no boundaries really. They kind of walk into your boundaries. And what's interesting with that is that you also stop getting, you won't be able to cope on your own. You lose the skill of just being on your own. You rely too much on being with other people. So Wonder Woman says not being able to make your own mind up. Yes, with the seeking help and support from others, that's true. So let's go to Tony's, for examples. So thoughtfulness of others. If you're someone who's very thoughtful of others, if that's your strength, what could be the weakness?
You can always be putting yourself last or waiting for, like you were talking about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You do the stuff for others, assuming that they're going to come back and they're going to be thoughtful of you.
Yes.
And you're naive and you can get very hurt that way.
Right. Very true. Very true. What about able to get things together at short notice? What would be the weakness of that?
A weakness.
It doesn't look like there's a weakness there, does it?
Well, it's always better to plan because then your error's going to come in the way.
Okay.
Make
Because
mistake.
so which means you actually you don't have the skill of planning ahead because you're always getting things together at short notice, which means that you probably be prone to procrastination too. Someone's typing, patient's typing, you get taken advantage of, and that's true. If you're someone who's very good at getting things together at not short notice, you probably find if you're at work, your manager has something that needs to be done quickly. Who would they come after? You, and you then get laden with too much stuff because they know that you'll cope with it. What if you are easily forgiven? You forgive people easily.
You get taken advantage of again.
Right, exactly. Exactly. There's this one I jumped, which I think is important for us to talk about. Good ability to analyze situations.
That's good.
What's the weakness?
What, to analyze situations?
If that's your strength, you're good at analyzing situations.
But you won't do a lot. You'll shy away, and you can miss out on opportunities.
That's true because you may spend so much time analyzing and seeing all the problems and things that you don't actually do them. Go on.
Sorry.
Go on.
Oh, thank you. Now, you can also become quite critical and negative, and which affects, like if you're working, it can affect people you're working with.
Exactly.
In the problems.
Exactly. So you could actually become someone who is very hard to be around because you're just seeing all the problems all the time, which just affects your mood around people. Are you seeing this? Are you seeing the pattern here? So essentially what we're saying here is there's a web of things that you are relying on that contributes to things going negatively that you are not aware of because you are only seeing the positives of those things. So if I'm someone who's very tidy, I'm just full focused on the benefits tidiness is bringing to me. But I don't see that being tidy sometimes can actually make me a pain to be around. That I make everybody else who is not as tidy as me, I nag them to death, for example. Or if I'm someone who's very self-reliant, I see that as a good thing, but I don't see the side that being self-reliant means then I take on too much of my stress and I don't share out my stress to other people at all, which means I'll be overwhelmed a lot of the time. And that overwhelm can then lead to me feeling low self-worth. And to make matters worse with all of this, because if you do this all the time, something powerful starts to happen that you're not realizing too. And I'll use this next analogy to explain that. So this will be very clear, especially if you drive. If you're someone who drives now, and you've been driving for years, why is it hard to forget how to drive?
Because you get complacent. You can't forget how to drive, but you can just get complacent.
You can get complacent with it because you just feel nothing's going to happen. But so why is it hard to forget? What makes it difficult to forget?
Because it's all we've learned. It's embedded in our brain.
Right, it's kind of ingrained in our brain because you see the process of learning to drive. We do it in such a way that we do it so much over and over and over again that it builds brain pathways. I don't know if you've ever heard the concept of neuroplasticity, where when you do something over and over again, it actually builds literal pathways in your brain so that thing that you're doing becomes automated. And that's how habits get built. So all those strengths, those tiny strengths that we've been relying on for years, what's happening to them as well? They're being built into pathways so that they are habits that we are just following, even if they are bringing negative things into our lives that we don't know. You see how pervasive this can be? So that if your personality is full of all these positive things that you've been relying on, thinking that you're trying to pull yourself out of problem, pull yourself out of mental health problems, pull yourself out of low self-esteem, but still relying on all those positive things, you're finding that it seems no matter what you're doing, you're not able to kind of move forward with the problem. It's just like going around in circles, going around in circles, going around in circles. But then, what's also good about the neuroplasticity thing is that it's not set in stone. Because once you start to understand the pattern, you understand the cycle, and you can work your way around, go the other way, you can actually build new pathways that start to work in your favor. It's just about knowing what direction to go with the different strengths that you've been relying on. I want to share this video because I think it's very important to see how powerful the brain can be in changing things or making things that seem impossible happen. So here's the video. There's no audio, just kind of watch what happens. Sorry. Oops. Sorry, I keep... Her foot writing is much better than my handwriting. Okay. I'll just pause it for a second there. Let me just unmute you quickly. Why do you think I'm showing you this video? You can unmute yourself if...
Anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
Make us humble.
Yes. Because you see, in doing this for years, she may have been born that way, or she may have had injured herself afterwards. It's not a natural process. You don't actually see anybody around you to copy doing that. But because the brain has this ability, like anything, if you do it enough times, you can build pathways to make that change. So anything is possible. And what does that have to do with us? If you've been struggling with low self-esteem for a long time, you've been struggling with situations where you don't feel emotionally stable for a long time, you can get to a point where you feel hopeless, like the situation can change. But what this is suggesting that your brain has the power, it has the inbuilt power to change. It's just that the problem was that we've been going the wrong way, relying too much on certain strengths, which then is maintaining the weaknesses that we are seeing in our lives. When we start to change this whole pattern, your brain can now learn new pathways that can solidify more progress, better things, better experiences in your life. I thought it was important to kind of show you that before then we go into the strategy now. So this is the ultimate emotional stability hack. And if you are able to practice this and practice this to the point where it becomes your natural habit, it becomes your nature, you start seeing things change. This is a system that will demolish low self-esteem problems in your life. This is the system that will break down any emotional weakness that you're experiencing in your life. And for me, in my own experience, I found this has worked so marvelously in my own situations. For some of you may not know, I used to struggle very badly with anxiety problems. Like I mentioned earlier, it started off with shyness, but there was a lot of anxiety problems. And for me, I've had to use this system to break through, and it's worked wonders for a lot of my clients as well. So here's the system. Just to make it easy to memorize, I call it the mnsd. So mnsd stands for magnify, notice, stop, do. do something opposite. So you're magnifying your strength, and you're noticing your strength when it comes into play. You're stopping yourself when you realize you're using the strength, and be mindful of what the strength is actually doing, and then you're doing something opposite or alternative. So let's just kind of elaborate on that. So magnify. So in this first step, you first of all want to clarify what your goal is. Let's say, yes, your goal is that you want to have more confidence in yourself. You don't want to have any more self-esteem issues. But to achieve that goal, you want to now start to identify different strengths that you may have been relying on that's contributing to this problem. So, for example, what strengths are going on in your life? So your strengths may be that you're someone who is very empathetic. And in your empathetic, you're very helpful to others. And you are very giving of yourself, very sacrificing of yourself. So the idea here would be then to figure out, okay, that strength, what weakness is it generating in your life? Maybe the weakness that strength is generating is that it makes it easy for your husband to take advantage of you. Not that he wanted to do this, but in fact, you've trained him to take advantage of you. And the more he takes advantage of you, the more he makes you feel like you are not worth much. So you start to figure out, okay, this strength of being empathetic and being kind and giving of yourself, you've got to figure out how to start toning this down a little bit. So this is how we magnify the strength. You actually shine the light on it to try and figure out something I'm considering as strength. Is it actually a strength true and through? Or has it started to bring poison in my life? Do I have to start to do something to balance it? So once you first identify any strength that is actually bringing difficulties into your experience, then the next thing is, whenever you find yourself using that strength, you stop. You notice it and stop. Stop yourself and take a step back a little bit and think, okay, is this the thing should I do this now again? So let's say you've been that person who's empathetic, and now your husband said something horrible to you. In the past, you would just brush it off and just let it be and just say, okay, that's just him. That's how he is. Let me just let him be, right? You stop. Actually, no. He shouldn't treat me that way. So in this case, you tell him, okay, I don't mean to be horrible or mean, but this is not right. It's not good for you to treat me that way. I will not talk to you like that. I will not talk about you like that. Now, what's interesting here is that you are beginning, even if you don't realize it, you are beginning on a subconscious level to start to claim back your sense of self-worth. Because you are actively starting to act in a way that helps your brain to start to associate with the fact that you have value too. So you're taking a step back. You are now stopping to see, how am I reacting? And then doing something either opposite or alternative. And in this case, you are doing something opposite would be, you are saying, okay, where you keep quiet and let him go. No, you don't keep quiet. You don't just let him go. It's not that you're going to fight with the person, but you're going to highlight that what you've just done is not good. I would appreciate if you don't do that again. And then leave it there. You've done something differently. Now, here I say do something opposite or alternative. Now, sometimes the opposite reaction may not necessarily make sense. So let's say one of your strengths is that you love and you give a lot of yourself to your children. And your children, in you loving them, you're giving them a lot of love. You've recognized that the weakness of this is that they become undisciplined. They need some discipline to have more boundaries. But the opposite of love is hate. Obviously, you don't want to start hating your children, right? So in this case, you want to find an alternative. And the alternative may be, okay, maybe you say no sometimes to the children. Maybe before you were saying yes 100% of the time. Maybe now you start to incorporate maybe no 70% of the time. So you're changing your action slightly. And so those are the 4 steps. And I know it sounds very, very simple. But guess what? If you were to use these 4 steps in all the multiple different areas where you have a strength that is chiseling away at your sense of self-worth, or chiseling away at your emotional stamina, you start to find yourself being more confident. And this is a cycle everybody I've taught this strategy finds themselves going through. So they start to implement this in the different areas of their life, and they start coming to therapy saying, I just feel more confident. I feel happier as a person. And they didn't realize that these things were what was holding them back before. I had a client. Now, this client, one of her strengths was that she was easygoing and easy to get along with. Yeah. But being easy to get along with meant that when all her friends were always doing she was always doing what her friends wanted her to do. So when they say, okay, we want to go to the cinema, and she really wanted to go to the park, she would say, okay, let's all go to the cinema. Or the friends would say, actually, we want to go to a pub. And what she really wanted to do is maybe stay at home and watch a video together. But she would say, okay, let's go. She would follow them. But she did this all her life. And guess what? What that did was it kind of eroded her own sense of self, purpose. She felt like she had no purpose because all she's been doing was living every other person's purpose. And that kind of eroded her sense of self. Now she had to start claiming this back. And so whenever she found herself almost saying, yes, let's just do that, she's saying, actually, no, can we do what I want? And then she learned something where before she used to think she had to follow through with her friends because they only stay her friends because she does what they want. But now she's starting to learn that actually her friends still stay her friends when she says, no, let's do what I want as well. And that starts to make her feel more confident and stronger in her own sense of self-worth. Now, yes, granted, that's just a small area of her life. But applying this approach to all the different areas of her life is almost like a building block that starts to build back confidence in yourself, starts to build back confidence in your experience. And so, like we said, if you remember, I showed you this at the very beginning, and we talked about the hidden pressures. Those strengths, this is where the hidden pressure, because these are the things that are sapping away a lot of your energy. And what's ironic about them is that this is the area where you actually have control in your life. You may not be able to control other people, but you can control these things that seem like positive things you're doing, but are sapping your energy or stealing your confidence, stealing your sense of self-worth. The more you do them, the more this boulder just gets little and smaller, the more confidence you find yourself having, the more energy you find yourself having, the less the emotional problems you'll be experiencing. And obviously, as you're going down, you are not creating a positive cycle. Whereas before, your body, your whole system was feeding off a negative cycle that was spiraling out of control. But when you start to do this in all different areas of your life, you start to create positive cycles that starts to make you more emotionally strong. And this is how we plug that hole in the boat that we talked about earlier on. This is how we create a system that starts to make you resilient without necessarily needing to rely too much on medication. Yes, maybe in the very beginning, if you are in a place where you are already down, maybe very depressed or maybe overwhelmed, you may need medication to start off with. But if you start off with medication and you start to practice this system, you'll find that eventually you can come off the medication and you're not going to relapse again, because the system will start to hold you up, because it will be addressing different aspects of your life. I want to stop for a second and ask people, as I've explained all of this, does it make sense?
Thank you very much. It's been really helpful and really interesting, and excellent. What I wondered is, the slide that you showed with the different strengths, and I know you explained the weaknesses. Yes. Would you be able to show that slide again before we finish? Because there's a few that I just want to jot down to have a look at, because I felt a lot of identification there, and I don't want to forget them. I don't want them to slip away. Okay. I'll show that. Yes, I'll show that again in a second. But just to mention,
some of you who are here may, or you're already actually members of the Take Back Control program, where some of you have taken advantage of it, some of you haven't taken advantage of it. You know that you get a free session with me where I actually help you map out your strengths that will be sabotaging you, like we've described today. And so those of you who have done it, you now have access to a page like this where I have mapped out all the different strengths that you have. So because what I've done is looking through my whole experience and looking through the different things that tends to bring people down emotionally. So I've mapped out for each person that comes, we do an assessment, and you get a page like this where you look at it. Okay, maybe your strength is that you put other people's needs above your needs most of the time. And this kind of gives you an explanation of the pros and cons and gives you an analogy of how this problem works. Also then goes into detailed steps of practical things you can do, and then gives you links to videos in the membership connected to the problems created by this strength, so that you know exactly what you can do to break that cycle, the negative cycle created by that strength. So you would have strengths like this. So just to say, if you're just watching this, in the membership, you haven't taken advantage of it. This is a free service for those in the membership. Please, I would have sent you an email with a link to fill in your questionnaire, and I can get this together. We do this together, and you know exactly what the strengths that you should be working with are. Because some of these are very obvious, but some are very subtle, and it's the subtle ones that you don't catch that tends to be problematic. Okay, so I'm just going to go back quickly to that screen.